Okay, now I know the price of the cube. Okay, so now we have Manu talking. So it's again about acceleration of commercial adoption. So it's another interesting study, and yeah, you're from PA Consulting, and you're focused on moving CHERI into deployment. At PA Consulting, Manu works on, leads work under the UK Secure by Design program, translating CHERI from innovation into real-world critical infrastructure adoption. So that's now your time, and hopefully everything works.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, take the mic. Oh, you want the... I don't mind this. It's okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Manu Ravishankar, I'm from PA Consulting, or as my tag says, specialized consulting firm. So I mean, it's quite interesting. So my background is not CHERI, is not software, is not embedded systems. I spent the last kind of 16, 17 years working on climate tech and trying to think about the market failures there. How do you get climate change tech people to buy and commercialize climate change technologies? So spending the last kind of year on CHERI has been really interesting, going from one market failure to the other in terms of memory safety. So hopefully have some kind of useful lessons to share here. So I'm going to talk particularly about the managed adoption program, managed deployment program that we've been running, funded by DSIT, whose aim essentially is to take CHERI to market, to find the first adopters of CHERI and start moving CHERI from research to commercial deployment and start seeing how that lands and what we can learn, and essentially pave the path for future adoption of CHERI to reduce the cost of adoption, as Ollie was talking about earlier in his keynote address. You know, we need to try some commercial adoption, see what works, what doesn't, build the business case, and then essentially hopefully lay the foundation for future adopters. So I'll kind of tell you what we've been doing and then maybe share some early reflections. So might be interesting and complementary to some of the other talks here. I had a what is CHERI slide, which I obviously removed for this particular audience. But essentially what, our conversations have been talking to different people in terms of what will it take to get CHERI adopted. And I've had probably hundreds of conversations the last year with, large companies around the world trying to convince them to take on CHERI. So some of the things that we're just going to mention here on the right, essentially, which is, grow and align the supply chain. It lines up with a lot of the conversations that we've been, hearing about since the morning. Shape regulation, assurance, and procurement. Tech can be ready, but we need a market pull. We need procurement to actually either call for memory safety or be aligned to when CHERI products are available. Obviously, having skills and capabilities both on the vendor side, but also on the supply chain side. And then ideally demonstrate value through real deployments and aggregate demand, which I'll come to in a second. So what we've been doing over the last kind of 8 months or so is we started out with that challenge, which is to go and find the first users of the CHERI technology. So we started with taking a step back and looking at all the critical national infrastructure across the UK and seeing where could be the a kind of meeting of stars in terms, alignment of stars in terms of asset refresh, potential high risk if the memory vulnerability is exploited, some level of regulatory pull, resource capability available, skills, awareness, etc. And then essentially we identified, I think at the start, about kind of 70, 75 places across the UK economy where we thought CHERI could potentially be implemented. And over a process of kind of prioritization, we kind of brought it down to about 25 and then brought that further down to about 6, where we thought that's the near-term opportunity where we can get CHERI adopted over the next kind of 4 to 6 years. And then what we started doing is assembled what we were calling collectives, which essentially is the ecosystem of people that we need around each of the use case to ensure CHERI can be successfully adopted, which essentially is the asset owners, the OEMs, the regulators, the investors, the insurers, because it's not a one organization game trying to get a new technology to be commercially adopted. It takes a village, in this case a collective, to be able to do that. And then what we're doing is essentially validating the demand, the capability, and the willingness of that ecosystem to take CHERI from R&D to ideally TRL kind of 8, 9 over the next few years. And so where we are at the moment now, and we're kind of moving into the fourth phase now, is kind of planned adoption. And essentially, we sat down with all of these organizations and looked at what were the barriers for them to use CHERI, and use that to kind of essentially develop a kind of intervention plan or set of projects that can take them from where they are now in terms of their CHERI awareness for CHERI product into a fully integrated CHERI product that can be bought by customers across energy, defense, telecommunications, and I'll tell you about the projects in a second. And then we're quite happy that DSIT have provided us the green light. So essentially from 1st of April, the program will be moving into real world deployment. So we have got 4 projects that are going to kick off, and over the next kind of 3 to 4 years are going to start integrating CHERI products into their kind of pipeline, and hopefully we'll start seeing the first commercial CHERI products out in the market through this program. So I think we're making some quite good progress. Of course, the next few years will really kind of tell us exactly how successful we've been, but we'll keep you posted. So how we've designed the program is trying to kind of go beyond, again, a research program, as I was saying, is the real products, real environments, trying to take 4 critical products that people use currently. There is an existing pipeline, there's a market, there's regulations around it. So people want these products. So hopefully we'll have a CHERI version of those products that people buy and use. The second is, of course, assurance that at every stage of the project development journey, ensuring not only the technology is working, but the market pull is there, validating the buyer still want it, the regulation is still there, and then pivoting and kind of reshaping the project if it's not. Regulatory assurance and buyer interface across all of these. So we've got a whole set of buyers committed on the program. So from people like BT, National Grid, SSE, UK Power Networks, some of the largest infrastructure companies in the UK have committed to the program and are interested to kind of buy the CHERI product when they're available, which is great. Which is, if you don't have the buying signal, you're essentially kind of developing projects into the ether. The next is the supply chain coordination and hardware readiness. So for this particular program, for the immediate 4 projects, we're working with the SCI team on their ICINI prototype, but also Ensilica and Codicep, because there are some other specific requirements that we think will come out of the program. So actually coordinating what the supply chain is developing versus what the buyers are asking for has been an interesting kind of dynamic. And then, of course, the learning capture and dissemination. What we want to do is to create a playbook, want to make the next wave of adoption as easy as it can be and cost effective. For that, we need to kind of learn and codify those lessons. So that's going to be a big focus. And ideally, what we want to create is a sustainable vehicle where people can come and innovate and commercialize CHERI products. We realize there's a very good ecosystem in CHERI Alliance and all that you're doing around the research. But hopefully what we can be complementary and add to it is real world lessons on CHERI adoption, and kind of feed that loop back into research. So we create a kind of almost an end-to-end ecosystem of CHERI going from research through to commercial deployment. So that's the program we've designed. So the 4 projects, and there's going to be press releases, etc. But I'll give you a quick overview. The first one is with Goldilocks to kind of develop a CHERI hardened display isolation device for kind of national security. So again, high assurance environments, significantly reduces exploitation pathways. The second is with Ultra on kind of using CHERI in the microcrypto device. Again, it's for defense, national security, critical infrastructure, hardens kind of PNT processing, secure by design deployment, hopefully simplifies device. And then the third one is Hildebrand. So this is one of the largest smart metering companies in the UK, looking at using CHERI in kind of load controllers. So UK is going through a big digital transformation in their energy system. So if everything goes well, a lot of assets across the energy sector gets turned up and turned down. But for that, we need to believe and trust those devices to be able to do it. And at the moment, the assurance for these devices are quite extensive, which kind of prohibits innovators from coming in and participating in it. So we think there can be a lot of secondary benefits beyond kind of securing these devices. And finally, EA Technology, again, one of the largest kind of grid technology companies working on a smart recloser. Essentially, it's a circuit breaker, a fuse that's more automatic. But again, for you to trust something that can switch on and off circuits on the LV network, you need to be really sure it's secure. So we think this could be a really good example of kind of showcasing how CHERI can secure critical national infrastructure, given what we've seen around the world in terms of power grids being one of the first lines of attacks. in terms of war. So we think actually doing this whilst UK is going through a big digitalization of the energy system could be quite an interesting use case. So I'll just end on some kind of early reflections. As I said, it's still early days, but I thought it's useful to kind of share from the group what we've been seeing over the last few months. The first one is, the orchestration of the supply chain is proving to be absolutely critical. It's not getting one organization to do it. We essentially need to line up a whole host of organization. If that falls, the whole adoption pathway falls. So a lot of my time has been spent on trying to align these pathways all the way from vendors through to kind of regulators and investors. Second is targeting adoption windows is really critical to get everyone bought in. So for example, if you take something like LV reclosers, if Ofgem, the energy regulator, is saying 2 million recloser devices are going to get bought by 2028, that really focuses everyone's mind collectively that there's an opportunity where these products are going to get bought for sure. And actually, if you create a CHERI product, there is an immediate market demand for that product. So actually targeting adoption windows is a really good commercial driver to get everyone kind of oriented. The third one is aggregated demand increases supply chain confidence. It's obvious, but one of our core philosophies when we're setting up this program is that if we find common kind of demand points across energy, defense, and telecommunication, that sends a very strong signal to people like SCI and other parts of the supply chain, where then they have the confidence to invest and kind of grow their capability such that these products can be done. At the moment, the demand is very fragmented, which makes it very hard for the supply chain to invest with confidence. So we're hopefully kind of tackling one of those critical barriers through the program. And finally, the adoption readiness framework. So this is a kind of mishmash of what has been used a lot in the US. Whenever there's a new technology, trying to take a almost a holistic approach of beyond technology, what is needed to make that technology successful. So that skills, culture, regulation, investment, etc. So if even one of those things doesn't work, you don't get a successful adoption of the tech. So essentially, we use this to kind of forensically evaluate all the projects to see, do we have all of those kind of almost green lights across the dashboard for us to progress? If not, we kept going back and seeing what needs to change in our assumptions for that to be true. And that's the basis on which we've constructed the projects. We thought that's quite a useful, keeping us honest in terms of, if we do those three things, will this get us to commercial adoption? And we think that's quite a useful framework for us to think about commercial adoption of CHERI, also in other technologies. Anyways, hopefully this is useful. I'm here the rest of the day and tomorrow as well. So if anyone wants to come talk about the program, I'm very happy to, but hopefully it's useful. Thank you.